Okay, we are resuming our Board of Commissioners meeting for Tuesday, October 15. And our first item up is Mr. Blomay's item, so you could come forward. And this is item 14A, order 19-10-15-10, in the matter of setting a public hearing for the proposed surrender of a portion of 19th Street, County Road numbers 667 and 1141, and a portion of Yolanda Avenue, County Road number 840, to the city of Springfield. Setting the public hearing for November 12th at 1:30 p.m. And before we make a motion to that effect, I'd like to call on Mr. Blomay, Jay Blomay.
Yes.
And welcome. Jay is our Lane County surveyor, and please introduce this item.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. ORS Chapter 373 requires that a public hearing and that notice of the public hearing be posted. I'm requesting the board to schedule a public hearing on November 12th at 1:30 p.m. time certain to hold the public hearing. Holding the public hearing on November 12th will provide my office enough time to fulfill the posting requirements as required by law. With that being said, I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, and what's the reason for this road surrender?
The city of Springfield has requested that we surrender these two portions of roads. This was part of an IGA that was between Lane County and Springfield back in like 2015. The city just recently annexed these portions of road into the city limits. So this would fulfill that requirement of that IGA.
And if we didn't do that, then there'd be county road inside the city?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Okay, Commissioner, questions, motion? Okay, go ahead.
So I'm all for cities taking over county roads and letting them maintain them, so I'd like to move approval of Order 19-10-15-10.
I would like to second in that I'm all for my community of Springfield taking over this particular county road.
Okay, it's been moved by Commissioner Bozovich, second by Commissioner Burney to approve Order 19-10-15-10 as presented. Further discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Order carries unanimously. Board order is adopted. Public hearing will be held on November 12th at 1:30 p.m. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, next up, we'll call Ms. Taylor, and that is item 14B, first reading and setting the second reading and public hearing on ordinance number PA 1359 in the matter of amending the Metro Plan to adopt amendments to the Springfield Transportation System Plan for application to the urbanizable lands within the city of Springfield urban growth boundary and adopting savings and severability clauses, and ordinance number 19-05 in the matter of amending Lane Code Chapter 10 to adopt amendments to the Springfield development regulations for applicable application to urbanizable lands within the Springfield urban growth boundary, LC 10.600-15, and adopting savings and severability clauses. Second reading and public hearing for Monday, November 4, 2019 at 6 p.m. for the work session and 7 p.m. for the public hearing. And Becky Taylor, Senior Transportation Planner, is here to discuss this item. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair Sorensen, Commissioners. And with me is Emma Newman. She's a Senior Transportation Planner for the City of Springfield. We're here today to prepare the board for this upcoming joint meeting with the Springfield City Council. There will be a work session and a public hearing. The item is amendments to the city's transportation system plan and to their development code. And there has been extensive public process and public comment to date. You may have noticed that your packet contains over 200 pages of content. And the Springfield City Council has already had several work sessions on the subject matter. And so we wanted to provide you with an opportunity to become more familiar with the key components. So I'll be reviewing the process and the proposal in my presentation, and then we'll welcome your questions either during the presentation or afterward. And then we will be asking for the official first reading of the 2 draft ordinances and for you to formally set the second reading and public hearing date. First, the reason this item is coming to the board, there are 2 draft ordinances in your packet. One is for amendments to the city's TSP, and this is processed as an amendment to the Metro Plan. And then there are also amendments to the Springfield Development Code to implement the TSP. And for a procedural comparison, you may have remembered that you recently co-adopted the update to the City of Cresswell's TSP. And in that scenario, outside of the metro area, that's the typical process where there's local adoption by the cities and then it comes to you. Within the Metro Plan, some of you may remember participating in the City of Eugene's TSP, and there's required joint public meetings. So it is a Metro Plan procedural requirement that you hold this public hearing jointly with the Springfield City Council. In all of these cases, in and outside of the metro area, the board's co-adoption function is for applicability to the urban transition area. And again, that's the area that's outside of city limits, but within the urban growth boundary. Before diving into the content, just wanted to point out the extensive public process and comment to date. First, the city and then the county co-adopted the Springfield TSP in 2014, and at that time they knew that they needed to amend their code to implement the TSP. So they started that work in 2016. Drafting the code amendments, and then along the way they picked up some needed TSP amendments. And they processed all of that through a stakeholder sounding board, and they held public meetings in 2017. It included a mass mailing to all property owners within the city urban growth boundary, and over 100 people attended the open house. Then in 2018, the Lane County and Springfield Planning Commissions held 2 joint public hearings on January 23rd and February 6th of 2018. The first hearing was attended by over 200 people, and testimony was provided by 36 people. At the second hearing, approximately 50 people attended and 12 people testified, and nearly half of that testimony was from people within the urban transition area. The planning commissions convened jointly 4 times afterward, extending late into the evening, carefully listening to the testimony and thoughtfully deliberating to arrive at a balanced and shared recommendation. The planning commission made important revisions to the amendments package to address the public comments. And then earlier this year, the Springfield City Council had several work sessions reviewing and refining what came out of the planning commission process. The council's proposed revisions, which are referred to as council alternatives in your packet. At the public hearing, you may hear public comments specific to the council alternatives versus the planning commission recommendation, but what is before the board is the council recommendation. So what is this council alternatives, actually, is the official term. This is what the document looks like within your packet. I know I'm not expecting you to read the text on the slide, but if you're looking for it, it's attachment 1. And it has color coding references so you can see the changes that were made to the amendments package by the Planning Commission and then by the council. In a nutshell, these amendments include specific changes to the TSP, to the project list, to update descriptions and cost estimates, and then updating all of the corresponding figures showing the projects. There's also a new map in the TSP proposed. It's called the Conceptual Street Map, and I'll talk about that in the next slide. But the bulk of the amendments is to the development code to implement the TSP, and it's important for the board to know that most of the development code is not directly relevant to urban transition properties because typically development that triggers compliance with all of these development code criteria would first require annexation. There are some limited instances, though, where it can apply to urban transition areas, so I'll point out that in the coming slides. But what this means for the board is that when you have your joint public hearing, you might hear a lot of public testimony and discussion that may not be directly relevant to your co-adoption purview, which again is limited to the urban transition area. So thank you in advance for your patience in participating in the joint process. This is a map of Springfield, just to emphasize where your urban transition area is. The city limits are shaded in gray, and the urban growth boundary is the black dash line around the city. The white area that's between the two is the urban transition area. So that's your co-adoption purview. And also this map that you're looking at is the new map that's being proposed as part of this amendment package. It's called the Conceptual Street Map. And what this map shows is existing and future arterial and collector streets and multi-use paths. It's a combination of existing maps within the TSP, namely the street classification map and the project figures. It does show local streets, existing ones, but it doesn't show any planned or future local streets. In your packet, there is no map showing future local streets. This is important because during the Planning Commission process, there was a map, and that generated some controversy. We heard opposition from people in the urban transition area about local streets being extended. And the Planning Commission responded to that public comment by adding more qualifying language to the map, but the City Council alternatives did not include the map. And you may, again, at the hearing, hear related testimony about local streets. This is what the project list amendments looks like in your packet. Again, don't expect you to read this slide, but the amendments are shown in pink text, and then the green text shows the council alternatives. So what you can see here is that it's mostly edits to existing projects. However, we did hear public testimony about projects. We heard people in the transition area opposed to annexation, and this package does not include annexation. You may hear testimony in fear of potential private property impacts to implement these projects. The Planning Commission dealt with those public comments by including more text about the public involvement process that happens before a project is built. And as you know from your experience in TSP co-adoptions, this list is needed to meet state law requirements, and it identifies what a city needs over 20 years. It also enables the city to effectively compete for transportation funding. So identifying these projects is just one step in the process. The subsequent steps are securing funding, and then before projects are developed, there is a public outreach process to get into the design details about how to minimize and mitigate property impacts. For the development code, as I mentioned, most of this is triggered by development that happens in city limits. There are some provisions that can be directly relevant to urban transition lands, such as special setbacks to building permits so that buildings aren't located too close to future street improvements. Lane County also has a setback regulation in Lane Code, as do most jurisdictions. Most of the proposed code amendments are about the city's street design standards. And so here's important to note that within urban growth boundaries, we defer to city standards. And this was an intentional policy change when we updated the Lane County TSP in 2017 in an effort to reduce inconsistencies. This is my final slide. And again, want to open it up for questions. Emma's specifically here to help answer any questions. And if there's anything we can't answer today, or if there's something you'd like us to follow up with you on before the public hearing, just let us know. Today we are asking the board for a first reading of the two ordinances and for you to formally set the second reading and public hearing date. Thank you.
Okay, any questions or comments from commissioners or a motion to approve? Yes.
I would like to move to approve the first reading of ordinance number PA 1359 and ordinance number 19-05 to set the second reading and public hearing for November 4th, 2019 at 7 p.m. at Springfield City Hall.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Commissioner Barney and seconded by Commissioner Bozovich to approve the first reading and setting the second reading on ordinance PA 1359, and setting the public hearing for Monday, November 4, 2019 at 7 p.m. in Springfield. Okay, further discussion. Commissioner Farr.
So once again, I didn't expect the motion so early, so I will be forced to speak to the motion rather than to the content. So to the motion. Something that you said, Becky, is really important to understand, and maybe you can explain this a little bit more. Before the project begins, there's an extensive public process. Now, that's not always evident to the people who see the list of projects. We witnessed that in Coburg, for instance. You may recall some of the consternation that surrounded that. So could you just ever so briefly describe the public process before a road project begins?
I'll have Emma speak to the process that happens in Springfield. Lane County has a strong commitment to public involvement. Anything that's not a maintenance project is required to come to the board for design concept approval. And there are lane manual expectations that we meet with abutting property owners, engage stakeholders, hold a public hearing before our Transportation Advisory Committee, and specifically to look at how to minimize and mitigate property impacts while still meeting the transportation needs. So we send postcards to people and really want to hear from people and get their input.
Becky, you thoroughly briefed me on that after Coburg, you may recall. So please, Emma, thank you.
I think the Planning Commission discussion on this led to us bringing some information out of the Springfield Development Code to people's attention and saying, how can we highlight this more within the transportation system plan? Because if you're a stakeholder showing up to a meeting and saying, here's this project list, how do I know that I'll be further involved? You probably don't know to go to the other document that gets into the details of at time of project development, depending on the scale of the project, here's the extensive notification and involvement opportunities to get involved with a specific project. So we pulled language from there and are looking at incorporating that text so that people can more clearly understand, oh, at time of project development, if it's a significant size project, I'm in the neighborhood, I'm gonna know about it. That being said, if it's a pretty minimal project, then it's gonna be a lower level of notification and involvement.
Well, thank you for that description. And that's important that people realize that, particularly when we hear testimony on it, because people will talk about the list in general and not realize that they will have input before it bisects their two warehouses, for instances. Okay, thank you.
Okay, anything further? Yes.
I'll just note real quick, because Emma may not know this, but this morning we approved 2 letters of support for a couple grants for the city of Springfield for some planning work that also involves wetlands and parcel-specific comprehensive plan. So this just is another piece of that puzzle as we continue to help Springfield plan for the future and a partner in that because of the urbanizable lands that cross over jurisdiction.
First, I want to thank you for allowing me to speak to you later at length to be completely prepared for this. Thank you, Becky. As I observe the long process of engaging with citizens, moving forward with plans, the things that need to be put in place to simply enable you to identify projects with the requisite engagement and notifications that occur with each project. What would someone say would be the downside of approving this as a joint body for the city of Springfield?
That's a challenging question for a transportation planner. This is kind of the heart of what we do. But I would think the public, some of the comments that we received that were perceived as negative, I think we're really about people just needing more information about the process. Again, the city notified all property owners within the urban growth boundary, and there was some required language about your property values may change, and so that really generated a lot of interest and concern, and people showed up. And then when they heard what we were really doing, I think half the people left with no concern. So the implications for the board in this case, again, you're looking at the urban transition area. If you decided not to adopt any portion of the package, it simply wouldn't apply to the urban transition area. And with the Eugene TSP, you did adopt some things, but not everything. So that is a possibility. We like to support the city as much as we can when we can and reduce the potential for inconsistencies and different packages going up to the state for acknowledgement. But if you feel like there's something that you just can't move forward with, then that element just wouldn't be part of the co-adoption package.
I'd just like to reiterate some of the public involvement that Becky spoke to. We did receive quite a few comments from the community members on this project. A lot of those pertain to the planned local streets. So through the Planning Commission's changes after the public hearing, and then the council alternatives have shifted that quite a lot about how do we achieve street connectivity throughout Springfield as Springfield develops. So now the council alternative is recommending to have written text that is relied upon. One section is the general criteria, and that provides some flexibility. And then there's a needed housing section, which complies with state laws to have clear and objective standards. So if a developer wants to come in and just follow the checklist and say, yep, I'm doing it this way, then they can proceed with development. So having
You guys
those.
do that in Springfield?
So I think that some of those changes that have evolved through this project have hopefully addressed a lot of the comments heard from individuals. But at the public hearing, we'll hear, are there any remaining, little changes to be made to really have it fit the Springfield community?
Thank you. Thank you.
Anything further before we go to a vote? Anything you want to add?
We will also have a brief work session before the joint public hearing at 6 o'clock, and then the public hearing will be at 7.
Is that the council chambers for both, or
It'll be in the library meeting room in City Hall
for 6? And then 7
for both of them, yeah, because there's.
Oh, both of them are in the library conference
meeting room.
Okay. All right, thank you. Can't miss it. Been there a million times. All right, so we'll then go to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. And so the first reading is adopted. The second reading has been set for 7 p.m. for public hearing on ordinance 1905. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, I don't see anything else on our agenda. I think we've done everything, except for maybe county council announcements. We can defer those till tomorrow because we'll have the county council here with us. We're going to have our 5:30 meeting with Oregon Kid Governor. Yes, that's her official title. Oregon Kid Governor Erica Baldwin from our very own Lane County, Oregon. And then we'll have our public comments for after that. So anything further? Yes.
Yeah, so I don't know if this fits under other business or not, and it's not really an agenda team request or work session request, but I'm wondering if we could have maybe a exec session rather quickly to talk about the issue of CBD products and the event center. I've received some information that they're being completely banned, and it seems like somewhat of an unfair treatment because there's a concern about people violating FDA and FTC rules as far as what they can claim they do. But there's, we've had essential oils and other products sold at holiday fair in the past where people may have been making illegal claims, but we haven't taken charge of policing that. And a preemptory ban, I'm a little bit concerned about, but I think it's something maybe if the board has interest in, maybe we need to have a little bit of a skull session on that because I'm concerned about just.
Would you be okay with us taking it up as an agenda team request that the board would ask the county administrator to send us an email or, and then based on that, if there's more follow-up we'd have that.
Yeah, there's just some urgency with holiday market coming up.
Okay.
And I know one particular vendor is being basically told they
Told-
can't participate.
Okay, so, Mr. Mokrizki, if we call that a agenda team request, item 15B,
Do we have, I guess,
yeah, is there sufficient interest on the board? I would be interested in that. So maybe Health and Human Services and the fair people and legal could get together and send us an email on that. And then based upon the outcome of that, we could have an executive session or not. Okay? So I think there's 3 or more commissioners that want to make that request. All right, so anything further on any topic, of any topic? Yep, go ahead.
This is a procedural question out of my own naivete. A couple of times today, and I was the party guilty because of my enthusiasm for supporting the city of Springfield, right out of the gate, before discussion, a motion was made, and I know twice Commissioner Farr mentioned I didn't expect a motion to be made, and it sounded like it might have restricted the discussion. So procedurally, are we supposed to have discussion before a motion is made? If that's a mistake, I don't want to make it again, or does it matter?
I guess everybody has their opinion. Commissioner Farr, do you want to
Oh,
give
it
yours?
doesn't? Okay.
Well, procedurally, I would speak to the motion instead of the issue being discussed, and which may have some impact on whether or not the motion is going to be made. I don't think it would have today. The first time, quite frankly, I would prefer to have made the motion.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you. And what I was doing, thank you. That answers that.
And I would just say that, we typically would have a motion made by the commissioner whose district seems to be most affected, or if they're on a committee, or if it just looks logical for somebody to make the motion. But that's really a matter of comedy and getting along. I think that the legal answer would be, everybody can make motions at any time for any reason, and then they can be ruled on by the chair as being germane or not, or
Well, forgive me.
whatever.
My remedial education is concluded, but thank you.
So, but I agree with both of you that, there's a way we typically like to do it. Okay, so now I suppose that does add one thing for your review of assignments then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Commissioner Bozovich's request to have a not a work session, it was an exec session discussion, but we'll take that up as an agenda
Yeah.
team request.
I think I kind of modified that to get written materials, and then we'll take it up like next week. Can we do that?
Yeah, what are the written materials?
Well, I'm just saying an email to address the issue of that legal counsel, fair staff, and HHS are apparently telling these people they can't say something about the product they're selling.
they can't even sell it.
And they can't even sell it, and apparently that's differing from other things.
And county council's provided, I think, some information on that, and so what we can do is have county council summarize the information that they've
Yeah,
come up with
Yeah.
related to that issue, share that with commissioners, and then we can take it up at agenda.
yeah, very good. All right, so the point is, I haven't seen anything on that, and maybe
yeah,
the
we'll
other
share with all
commissioners
the
haven't either. Yeah, okay. So, okay, thank you. So I think we're ready to then recess till 5:30. And so, anything else from anybody before we do the recess? Okay, so we'll recess till 5:30.